Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you my entire eyeshadow palette collection. This right here is the way that I store them at the moment. I have 3 shelves full of them. Currently probably need to expand to the 4th one soon. And then I also have a few of my Obsessions palettes from Huda Beauty right down there. In today's video I'm not only going to show you every single palette I own, but I'm also going to tell you a thing or two about each one. It's going to be a pretty long video, so I suggest you grab a snack and don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you like it and subscribe before you leave. Let's get started. Here's the first palette I have to show you. This one is the Belle of the Ball palette from Pat McGrath and Bridgerton. Here is what the inside of this one looks like, and I really love the shimmers in this palette. In particularly this one here, it is absolutely blinding, and I love the depth that this burgundy adds to any look you create with this one. This one is also Pat McGrath and Bridgerton. This one is called The Diamond of the First Water, and here is what the inside looks like. As you can see, as far as the pinks and burgundies are concerned, this one has a similar color story to the previous one, but it has different pops of color, and the main shade I love in this one is this absolutely stunning light blue, very reflective shimmer. This Pat McGrath palette here is called Rose Decadence, and here is what the inside of this one looks like. It has a beautiful rose toned color story, great pops of color, but none of these are as shimmery and shiny as the ones I just showed you. However, I do love this deep rose, almost burgundy shade right here, and this transition color is amazing. This one here is a palette that I designed with Lethal Cosmetics last year. They basically have this palette designer on their website where you can choose all of your own colors. I loved every single shade that I selected for this one. Lethal has really stunning shimmer shades and really beautiful mattes as well, and I like that my palette can be kind of divided in two if you look at it like this, or even in quadrants. I designed it so that each quadrant was its own little makeup look. This was a lot of fun to make. I also have this palette from Lethal Cosmetics. It's called the Berlin 89 palette. Here's the exterior of it, and once you open it, this right here is what it looks like. The color story of this palette is inspired by the fall of the Berlin Wall, which is amazing, and I love that it has a multi-chrome shade right here in the middle. I had to lower the light to show you this one because it's so white. I don't think I'll ever get rid of this palette. I don't think they sell it anymore. This is from when KVD Beauty was still Kat Von D Beauty, and this palette has 4 different tones of highlighter shades. It doesn't look like much on the pan, but if you do any sort of colorful looks, you can always count on this palette to have the perfect inner corner shades. Moving on to another palette that I don't ever see myself getting rid of, the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. Arguably the last amazing palette Urban Decay released, and it's been a while. This right here is the inside of the Born to Run palette. It has a beautiful color story, all kinds of warm and cool tone shades. You can create a limitless amount of looks with this one. By the way, this right here, self tanner, my finger is okay. I love this palette. I have a little palette here by Juvia's Place. This one is called The Mauves. I think currently this is the only Juvia's Place palette in my collection. I do have another one coming that I recently ordered though. And the main reason I love this palette is the deep burgundies and this stunning duochrome shimmer down here. Next I have the Supreme Bronze palette from Artist Couture. Take a look at the inside of this one. Beautiful combination of warm tones and cool tones and really stunning shimmer shades. I have to admit though, the main thing I love about this palette is this incredible black slick packaging. I'm obsessed. Next we have a Vizier palette. This one is the Neutral Mattes palette. If you love basic brown smoky eyes, this palette is a must-have in your collection. If you're a makeup artist or you do makeup on other people, this palette is definitely a necessity. Really amazing formulas and very simple design, but it just works. Also from Vizier, this one is the Editorial Brights palette. As you can see, this palette is a beautiful rainbow of colors, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, they sent this my way and I have never actually used it yet, but I still intend to use it, so it stays in my collection. Here's a Charlotte Tilbury palette that I often forget I own. This one is from quite a few years ago. It is called the Icon palette. I have this one from when I worked at the Charlotte Tilbury counter, and I also don't remember ever using it. I need to set these palettes aside so that I can get to it. This is shameful. Here's the Huda Beauty Gemstone Obsessions palette. This sparkly mess right here is what the inside of it looks like. It has really beautiful pops of color. These are very shiny, and I'm pretty much about to show you my entire Huda Beauty Obsessions collection. So we're going to follow that one up with the Electric Obsessions, which might have been my favorite Obsessions palette I ever bought, and I had so much fun playing with this rainbow of colors. This one is the Khaki Haze Obsessions, and I love this palette so much. It is one of my favorite Obsessions palettes in my collection. It's very different for Huda, and the cool tones in this palette are top notch. I love it. This is a great palette for the fall season. Here is the Neon Obsessions. I love the packaging of this one. And here's what the inside of this one looks like. This one is pretty springy, but also very different. I love the mint shades in this palette, and this palette has some really stunning shimmers. This one is my newest Obsessions palette, the color block Orange Purple. And I'm honestly not very excited about it. I actually really loved the eyeliner shade in this palette. I feel like she should come out with like a whole range of these eyeliners, because to be honest, it worked really nicely for me. But I don't love the formulas of the purple shades in this palette, so it's not one of my favorites for sure. Toffee Brown Obsessions next, and here is what the inside of this one looks like. It's actually a really beautiful basic palette to have, but the formulas are, I would say, so-so on this one. I'm not obsessed, but I also don't hate them. Purple Haze Obsessions next, and here is what the inside of this one looks like. I have yet to try a good matte purple from Huda. This one right here is also not it, but I do love the shimmers and more neutral shades that this palette has. My other neon obsessions is the Orange Neon Obsessions, and here is what the inside of this one looks like. To be honest with you, this palette is really fun and perfect for the springtime. Chocolate Brown Obsessions next. Again, the formula in this one is not bad, but also not great. I do really like all of the shades that come in here, but Huda Beauty has come out with much better formulas in her palettes than the ones in this one, so it's kind of a disappointment. And I have the same opinion about the Caramel Brown Obsessions. This is what the inside of this one looks like, and this particular shade up here is the worst eyeshadow I've ever tried. There is absolutely no pigmentation on it. It's just a waste of a space in this palette. This one here, on the other hand, is one of my favorite Obsessions palettes from Huda Beauty, the Nude Obsessions Light. If you have medium to fair skin, every single color combination you create with this palette you're going to be obsessed with. The mattes are great, and the shimmers are even better in this palette. This deeper matte tone right here gives any look you create with this palette such beautiful intensity. Highly recommend. Moving on to another palette from the same collection, the Nude Rich. Also amazing formulas in this one, plus I love burgundies, so this is one of my favorite burgundy palettes in my collection. I'm obsessed with how deep and rich the shades are in here, and the shimmers are pretty great as well. Wild Python came out during the fall season last year, and I actually really love this one. This palette also has amazing formulas, great mattes, and even better shimmers. If you are into this color story, I highly recommend. Nude Medium is also an amazing palette from the Huda Beauty Obsessions line. Again, great formulas, great color story, another must-have. From the palettes she released during the fall season last year, Wild Jaguar was definitely my favorite. Take a look at the absolutely stunning cool-toned color story. Every single shimmer shade in this palette is to die for, and you have a matte black and some other matte colors that you can put around them. This palette is amazing. Next we have the Wild Chameleon. Another amazing Obsessions palette. I absolutely love the formulas in this one as well, and it has a stunning color story. Sand Haze Obsessions next. In comparison to everything I just showed you, this one's just okay, but it's actually a pretty palette as well. The shimmers in this one, not as fun as the ones I just showed you. They are a little bit more subtle, but they perform pretty well. And finally, the last Obsessions palette in my collection, the Wild Tiger palette. This was from the New Year's release, and just like the rest of the Wild Obsessions palette in my collection, I absolutely love this one. Great formulas, fun shimmers, nice mattes. Let's get into some Dior next. This is the Cool Neutrals palette. I remember I got this one during a Sephora luxury haul and really enjoyed using it. This is another one of those palettes that I need to have more present so that I can pull it out more because I love it and I rarely use it. I have the Minnie Mouse palette from House of Sillage right here. This is what the inside looks like. It's a cute palette, nice formulas, and I love Minnie Mouse, but I'm for sure at least missing a matte shade in here for me to truly like this one. Here is my Wayne Goss palette. This is his palette in Pearl and what the inside of this one looks like. I feel like this palette is so bridal. I love the romantic color story. I love the shimmers and this Glimmery shade right here. It doesn't have a lot of depth to it, but every single shade in here is perfect, especially for natural looking, romantic looking makeup. Like brides would get a lot of use out of this one. Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. I remember when this one first came out, it sold out so fast and people were wanting it for so long until it finally restocked like a whole year later. Anyways, I have had it since then and I haven't used it in quite a while, but I remember being obsessed with this when it came out and I really liked all of the formulas in here. I lied to you earlier about only having one Juvia's Place palette. I also have a couple of quads. This one is the Rebel in Army, and here's what the inside looks like. Juvia's Place has some really beautifully pigmented shades, nice shimmers, and the mattes give me a little bit more trouble, but I can make them work. The other one I kept was this one here. This is the Rebel Mince, and I love this one so much. I can tell you that this is my favorite Juvia's Place palette I have, and also that if you're looking for mint shades, this right here is the palette that you need because they did their matte and shimmer mint shades a lot better than most high-end brands I have tried that have done similar shades. Here is a Quint palette by Dior. This one is called Nightbird and I like this palette, but I am not obsessed with it. I don't love this palette. I find that a lot of these shades are a lot more sheer than I wish for, and when I'm doing eye looks I like my shades to be a bit more pigmented, so I like it, but I don't love it. From the same Dior collection, this is the Early Bird palette, and I like this one even less than the previous one because the more satin shade in this one is this brown right here, and I don't find that color flattering. It has a little bit too much yellow in it. It looks a little bit like baby poop, and I don't like baby poop colored things. This one right here, my #1 favorite Viseart palette. This came out during the holiday season last year. Even the outside packaging in this one is stunning. It's called the Bijouette palette, and just look at the stunning colors that come in this palette. This palette does not have a flaw. It is flawless, it is perfect, it is colorful, it has the perfect amount of like neutral mattes to go around every single one of these pops of color. I am obsessed with this one. Again, the best Viseart palette. If you're thinking of trying Viseart and you like colorful looks, this one here is definitely the one to go with. I haven't tried them all, but I doubt there's a Viseart palette that I'll like more than this one. Also from Viseart, I have the Spritz Edit palette right here. And here's what this one looks like. It's got some really nice peachy shades. It has this deep red that you can darken up things with, some beautiful shimmers. A pretty solid palette for sure. This one doesn't need a presentation. Urban Decay Naked Original palette. And here's what mine looks like. I promise you I've used this palette a bunch, but you can't even tell. I'll tell you what though, when I first got this palette, this was like my special occasions makeup palette, so I really tried not to use it that much back in the day, and so that is why mine looks pretty okay still. This palette has endless memories attached to it and I will never get rid of it. I feel pretty much the same about the Naked 3 palette. I love this one intensely. Now this one looks pretty new and I'll tell you why. It is pretty new. I had a Naked palette for years that I used a lot, and the last time I went to Cuba, which I believe was now 7 years ago, I left it there for a family member of mine to love and enjoy. And I had this one here as a backup, so I haven't really used this particular one as much, but the previous one that I left in Cuba, I used a ton. I also own the Naked Wild West palette. Here's what the inside of this one looks like. And for some reason, I'm just not as inspired with this palette. It's not bad, but it's not great. Next, this one is the True to Myself palette from Rare Beauty. And I don't think I'm lying to you when I tell you that this is, in fact, my only Rare Beauty palette. It has pretty nice formulas. I was actually impressed with it. I no longer love chunky glitters like the one in the middle of this palette, and then also the half moon pans are kind of hard sometimes to get your brush inside of, so that's another issue I have with this one. I have a love-hate relationship with the design of the palette itself because I love the hard plastic, I love how slick the palette is, but I don't like the design of the pans inside of the palette. Here's another palette that forever stole my heart and I never see myself getting rid of. This is the Desi and Katie palette from Dose of Colors. To this day, this is the only Dose of Colors palette I own, and I chopped up the tag with all of the names and glued it to the front of the palette so that I can see the names of the shades as I was using it. Anyways, this palette has a perfect mix of mattes and metals, and I love the pops of color that come in this palette. It is a beautifully designed palette. It's just perfection, to be honest. I'm obsessed. Starting with this Anastasia palette here, I'm about to show you my entire Anastasia palette collection. This one is the Shadow Couture World Traveler palette from Anastasia, the first Anastasia palette I ever bought, and as you can see by the gaping hole in this shade, Pink Champagne was in fact my favorite shade in this one. It has a beautiful combination of colors and it definitely got me interested in Anastasia shadows to come. Next, I have Subculture here, which even though it's a palette that is a bit hard to work with for me, I don't ever see myself getting rid of because the shades that were chosen for this palette are perfection. This color right here called Rowdy is the most absolutely gorgeous intense burgundy shade ever. I love it. Who remembers the Riviera palette? This is another one of those palettes that kind of got me out of my comfort zone when it came to colorful shades, and it's because it's got a beautiful combination of softer, more wearable shades and pops of color, and so I was obsessed with this palette for the longest time. By the way, I do have videos reviewing and videos using pretty much all of the palettes I'm mentioning. This one right here is a classic, the Soft Glam palette from ABH. This is a staple in my collection and in a lot of other people's collection. The shade selection in this palette is impeccable. It is a palette that you can use for any occasion. It's got really light shades and really deep shades and just perfect pops of like metallic shades. It's beautiful. The Sultry palette has the same sentiment in the Anastasia line, except this one's like the cool toned version of the Soft Glam palette. This particular palette was actually gifted to me by a subscriber, which I am forever thankful for. She was so sweet. She had two of them and gifted me one when the palette was sold out. I love it. I did a 5 looks 1 palette with it, and I remember that a lot of you loved that video. Let's keep going with Jackie Aina's stunning Anastasia palette. Honestly, one of the best things Anastasia has ever released. The color combination is just spectacular. I love shades like Trust Issues and Zam and Shookington and Lituation as well. All of those shades are so amazing. Modern Renaissance, definitely another classic palette from Anastasia. As you can see, mine is very well loved. This palette and I had a moment, and that moment lasted a while, but that while was before I ever started my YouTube channel, so I don't actually have any videos with this one on my channel. Unfortunately, I'm not as inspired by this palette as I used to be, so I'm also not planning to do any videos with it. Who remembers the Alyssa Edwards palette? Another extremely fun, colorful palette from Anastasia. Another palette that got me out of my comfort zone, and I really enjoyed playing with this. I think I even have a 5 looks 1 palette in my channel with it. The Norvina palette is also excellent. If you see me putting the palettes like really close to the camera here, it's because my camera is having a hard time focusing today. Anyways, this palette right here flawless color selection, an even amount of mattes and metallics. The formulas are incredible. One of my all-time favorite palettes from Anastasia. What is not to love? Now this one here was actually a bit of a disappointment for me. The Carly Bible palette. It was borderline a little bit too basic. I know that a lot of you love it because it is a staple good for everyday palette, but to be honest, I never got into it. Also, a lot of the shades, like all of these right here, are so close with one another. I just wish there was a little bit more variety in this one. The Prism palette next, and one of my favorite things about this one is the black suede packaging. I love it. And then it also has a pretty nice color story. I would say some of my favorite colors in this one are Lure down here, and then Lucid, Dimension, and Eden. Amrezy also had a collab with Anastasia right before the pandemic. And here's the palette that Amrezy designed. I obsess over the color Barb right here. Liddy is also a really nice shade, and so is Anastasia. Barb definitely takes the cake. Besides that, the palette also has really nice matte shades. But Barb though, the best. And I also love saying that name, Barb. Lastly, the newest Anastasia palette in my collection, which is the Primrose palette. This palette is stunning. It's incredible. It is a must-have, but I could definitely do without the blush shades that came in this one. I don't really need them in there. I feel like it's a beautiful palette without it, and it could have saved us a few bucks if the blush shades weren't included, because this is all I care for right here. Like I said, it is a stunning palette, and the formula of these shades, chef's kiss. Let's keep it going with this one. This is the Alva 2 palette from Odin's Eye, and here's what the inside of it looks like. I really like the color story of this one, plus Odin's Eye formulas are incredible. And this one, by the way, is called the Mini Forest palette. From that same collection, this is the Mini Sky palette, and take a look at what the inside looks like. I die for neutrals, golds, purples, and roses, so what is not to love in this one? And this one is called the Mini Ocean palette. It has some stunning blues and warm tones. I really wish that the color Starfish here was a matte shade. That would have been perfect, but the center shade is to die for. Kaleidos is another indie brand that has incredible formulas, and this palette is called Sashimi City. Take a look at the inside of this palette and tell me this is not a natural makeup lover's dream. Plus the formulas in here are the most creamy with the most shiny metallic shades. I just love this one. This one is called Lunar Lavender. It's the same style of palette as the one I just showed you, but this one is their purple version. And the purple mattes in this palette are actually extremely blendable and soft. Love this color story, and I'm obsessed with this duochrome shade right here. Let's get into some Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Super Nudes palette, and what the inside of it looks like. It is pretty basic but kind of a staple, and the formulas are incredible. I have 3 of her 12 pan palettes. This one is the Bejeweled Eyes to Hypnotize. Charlotte Tilbury has extremely easy to use, very beginner friendly formulas, and she gives you the palettes divided in different looks that you can do. So these are incredible if you're just getting started in your makeup journey. Very pigmented, and the shades pretty much blend themselves. I love this color story, but out of my 3 larger Charlotte Tilbury palettes, this is my least favorite. This one here is the Pillow Talk palette, and I am obsessed with this one. It is natural, it's got some depth, it's got some warmth, it's got a little bit of a pop of color with the pinks. A very romantic color story, ideal for brides and also ideal for like everyday use. This palette is incredible. This one is called Smoky Eyes Are Forever. It came out last fall. This is the last of her 12 pan releases, and my favorite thing about this one is the diversity in it. It's got warmth, it's got olive tones, it's got burgundy tones, it's got like the more natural looking shades right here. A stunning combination of mattes and shimmers. I love. These right here are all of my Charlotte Tilbury quads, and I'm kind of quickly going to go through them. Here's the newest and one of my favorites, the Pillow Talk Dreams quad. This one has special packaging because it was a holiday palette, and this is what the inside looks like here. This one is called the Celestial Pearl palette, and if you wear a red lip and shiny eyes, this is ideal. Cosmic Pearl from the same collection. It was pretty, but I like the other one better. If you want an all matte palette, Desert Haze right here is the one to go with. This one is the Pillow Talk Original, which is really beautiful. Glamour Muse. Dazzling Diamonds. The Rebel, this is the old Rebel, which is discontinued. My favorite one and the unmentionable one, the Fire Rose palette. Luxury palette of Pops. The Bella Sophia. And Walk of No Shame. Here are my Viseart minis. I'll quickly go through these as well. This one is the Paris Etoile palette. Lavender Quad. The Pistachio Quad, which was my favorite from this collection. And Pastel, which was honestly a disappointment. From the holiday collection, this one is Bouillon. Garnet right here. Lapis, L-A-P-I-S. And Peridot, which I also love. So for some reason, I like the greens from these collections. Next, I have my Natasha Denona minis. Here is the Mini Xenon palette. If you like a silver black smoky eye, get this. If you like grays, get this. I love. Mini Crush palette, which is not bad, but also not my favorite. Mini Retro palette. I'm obsessed with these two shimmers, and the transition shade is nice too. The Mini Biba palette, one of my favorite minis for sure. I also really like the Mini Love palette. This one's pretty incredible. The Mini Zendo looks like it needs some help. This is what mine looks like, and this is actually a pretty nice palette. I like this one a lot. Mini Metropolis is also a pretty incredible palette from Natasha Denona. This one was perfect for the holiday season. I love. And my number one favorite mini has to be the Mini Star palette. I am obsessed with this one. It is the perfect combination of colors, and it has a lot of variety. This might kind of be the halfway mark. I still have a lot of my most exciting palettes to come. Let's keep going with this Nomad Paradise Islands palette. This is an incredibly beautiful rainbow palette. The pigmentation, the shimmer, the shine, the colors, everything about this palette is super lovely. I did, I think, 3 looks with this one when it came out, and I loved it. Also from Nomad Cosmetics, the Tokyo palette. This one was a bit of a letdown because I wanted to love it so bad, but honestly the pastel shades in here, especially like this middle row, did not perform the way I wish it would have, and some of these shiny shades at the bottom are not as pigmented as I would wish for, so I can make it work, but it's always a struggle, and I don't really recommend this one. Also from Nomad, America's Parks palette. This one on the other hand is probably my most recommended one from Nomad. I love the color story. The pigmentation and formula of the shimmer shades in this one is to die for. The mattes are also incredible, and let's face it, this color story is right up my alley. Nomad Land of Fire and Ice, the Iceland palette. Beautiful shift between mattes and shimmers, warm and cool tone shades. This one makes me step out of my comfort zone and be creative. Also really liked it. And the Whistler Snow Lodge, which is my favorite outside packaging. Here's what it looks like on the inside. Incredible formulas. A true winter palette, and also one that makes me step out of my comfort zone, and I always end up loving the looks. Look at this super dreamy packaging from Charlotte Tilbury. This one right here is the Glowgasm palette. Not sure why it's with my palette collection, but I showed you anyways. Okay, it's in my palette collection because it's the same size as these, and these actually have eyeshadows in them. So this one is called Glowing Beauty. It is a face and eyes palette. Incredible formulas. A true travel palette from Charlotte Tilbury. You can create a whole customized look with this one. I love this shimmer shade in the center. This one is called Pretty Blushed Beauty, and it is the lighter version of the one I just showed you. Love this shimmer shade right here. This one's pretty bridal. If you have lighter fair skin, this is the one for you. From Kaleidos, the Flower Punk palette. I love the innovation of how this top part detaches, and this is what the inside of the palette looks like. Every shade in this palette performs amazingly, and if you want a perfect summer to fall palette, this is it right here, because it has a perfect combination of fall shades and summer shades. I love it. Here's a pretty old but also kind of unique Urban Decay palette, the Gwen Stefani palette. Listen, when this palette came out, this color story was ingenious and innovative. Right now it just looks like every other palette in my collection. Huda Beauty Rose Gold eyeshadow palette, the original version. The formula in here is kind of crappy. Then I have the Desert Dusk, also from Huda Beauty, and I'm not sure if the shades in this one dried out or if it was just not that good to begin with, because I remember thinking back in the day that it was an amazing palette, but every time I've touched it lately, it seems very dry. So maybe mine's just expired and it didn't age well, but I really don't like it as much as I used to. At Forest Sight, the Raw Beauty Christie and ColourPop collaboration. This palette is incredible, one of my all-time favorite ColourPop palettes I have ever tried. The formulas are beautiful, the packaging is beautiful, everything about this palette is just amazing. e.l.f. Electric Mood palette with Tiana Major. Honestly, the best e.l.f. Cosmetics palette I have ever tried. I have tried high-end formulas that are not as good as the formulas in this palette. This one's pretty incredible. Another one of these from Charlotte Tilbury. This one is the Stoned Rose Beauty palettes. I think out of all of the palettes I have with this format, this one is my favorite. Milani Gilded Terra palettes. Incredible color story. I actually really like it, and I can totally make these formulas work for me, but not the greatest quality of shadows. I feel like the price of these is kind of comparable with ColourPop, and I like ColourPop better, for example. Here's another e.l.f. palette. This is the e.l.f. and Jen Atkin Face and Eyes palettes. The colors in here are true like must-have basics, so for that reason I really like it, but honestly I have these shades in most of my other palettes, so I never reach for this one. My first and only Clionadh Cosmetics palette, the Dragon Fruit palette. This is an all shimmer palette. Some of the shimmer shades can be used on your crease because they kind of turn like a satin color when you blend them. However, I think this is mostly a palette that I would recommend if you are looking for stunning and extremely metallic, extremely attention-seeking shimmers, because that is what you get in here. These colors are incredibly pigmented. NARS Summer Unrated palettes. I love NARS eyeshadow formulas. They always perform really well for me, and if you're into this color story, it's kind of basic. You might have it in other palettes in your collection, but it's beautiful regardless, so I do recommend it. I like it. This one here was actually a pretty cool release from Urban Decay this year. The packaging is okay, but I actually really liked the color story of the palette. The shimmers are great, the mattes are great. This was a fun palette to play with. I think it was like 50% off on sale at Sephora recently. And here is my Hindash Monochromance palette. I was so stoked to get my hands on this one, but honestly, I mean, it wasn't bad, but I don't love it either, so it was kind of a disappointment for me. It was just okay. I think it's expensive for the price for sure. I think it should be a lot less than what it retails for. Crash Cosmetics Jadette palette. I got this one in Spain. Really beautiful romantic color story. Nice formulation. Nothing to write home about, but it's a pretty palette. This one here is a newer release from Urban Decay, Half Baked palette. I really like this color story. It's a little bit basic, but honestly, the formulas in here performed really well and I enjoyed using it. Here's the Odin's Eye collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist, the Gila palette. Honestly, obsessed with this one. Green is not my favorite color story to wear on my eyes, but these greens are perfect and I can wear them and I really like them. However, my favorite thing about this palette has got to be this bottom row right here. Every single one of these colors is to die for, and this color River is a multi-chrome shade and I don't have anything else like that in my collection. It is so lovely. This is the Druid palette. The brand is called Fantasy Cosmetica, and she did a fantastic job at curating the shades that come in this palette. It's actually a pretty incredible palette. I love the mattes and I'm obsessed with the duochromes, plus the color story is kind of perfect. Fenty Beauty Bomb Posse palette. Meh is all I have to say about this one. Coral Me Maybe from Essence. This palette is like $2, so for $2 it is incredible. I love it. REM Beauty Midnight Snack. Personally, do not recommend. This one got released during the holiday season last year from MAC. I think it might be the only MAC palette I currently own. And this is what it looks like right here. Pretty basic, but it actually performs pretty amazingly as well. The shades are great. This could be a really good everyday palette. Let's keep going. This is the Through My Eyes palette from I Love Sarah E and ColourPop. This palette is incredible. I don't ever see myself getting rid of it. She killed it with the combination of colors she shows for this one. I love. The Harry Potter Hufflepuff palette that Ulta had. I love this one mainly because I love Harry Potter, but the formula wasn't bad and I actually really like this color story. From that same collection, I also got the Ravenclaw palette. This right here is my Harry Potter house, and also a really lovely color story with good formulation. This is the Pure Cosmetics and Raw Beauty Christie palette collaboration. I love that she was the one who drew all of these little things that the palette has on the outside, and I like half of this palette. This side right here with all of the colors I couldn't quite make work the way I would have liked it to work, so this is not my favorite right here. However, this other side did perform really well for me and I do like it a lot more. From the Kaleidos Smoky collection, I kept this palette right here. No idea what it's called because it doesn't say it on the packaging, but there's only a couple of these, so the brown one. Kaleidos, like I've said before, has incredible formulas. I love their shimmers, love their mattes. This one is nice and basic, but really, really lovely. And actually, I'm not even gonna call it basic because there's nothing basic about that shimmer shade right there. From M Cosmetics, this palette is called Magic Hour, and it is a peachy lover's dream. One of my favorite peach palettes in my collection. Love the formula of the shades in here. The shimmers are nice, but the mattes are incredible. This NARS palette right here is called Afterglow. Take a look at the inside of it right here. My main issue with NARS palettes is that they kind of all look like one another. I showed you another NARS palette earlier and the color stories are pretty similar. However, like I said before, I love the shades and I love the formula. This one is the Narcissist Wanted palette, and you know, pretty similar to the rest. This might be my favorite one of the ones I own though. I do really love this one. From Patrick Ta, this is the Major Dimension eyeshadow palette. This one is the first one he came out with, which was already over a year ago. I do really love the cream shades that come in this palette, and all of these mattes down here are quite incredible. The shimmers in this one are also really good, but not as good as the next one, which is his Rose eyeshadow palette. First of all, I do like the color story of this one better. Second of all, he made all of these shimmers up here super pigmented, super rich, super buttery. I love them, and I also love the creams that come in this one. Overall, I feel like this one has a really good formulation just like the previous one, but a better structure to it and a better color story. This palette right here has my heart. Heather Austin did a collab with Adept Cosmetics, which made me try Adept Cosmetics for the first time, and I cannot tell you, I cannot begin to describe how obsessed I am with their shimmer shades. I have never touched anything butterier and more pigmented. Dominique Cosmetics launched this one recently. This is the Moment palette, and this is what the inside of it looks like. The shades Mesmerized and Life of the Party are the main shades I love about this palette. Everything else I feel like it's just not as unique, but Life of the Party and Mesmerized made this palette worth it for me. Look who we have here, the Michaela palette with Glamlight. This is the only Glamlight palette I own. And let me tell you, if you look at it like this, right, doesn't it look so pretty? Doesn't it look incredible? Don't you want it? Because I wanted it, but then I used it. Now, don't get me wrong, all of the shimmer shades in this palette are great, but I cannot make the mattes work for the life of me, especially the colorful mattes. I had a really hard time putting looks together with this palette. I am not the best at working with pigments, and so for that reason, even though I just adore the way that this palette looks, I never reach for it. Do you guys remember the So Jaded palette with Kathleen Lights and Colourpop? Oh, the good old days of YouTube. Anyways, I love this palette. I think Kathleen Lights did a wonderful job selecting the shades for this one. And it's kind of like a classic palette that I don't ever see myself getting rid of because it's just lovely. Here is the stunning Tatty Beauty palette and what the inside of it looks like. This palette was lovely and it definitely had its moment on the market. But if she were to release this right now, I don't think I would go for it, to be honest, because I am just not into the chunky glittery shades anymore. I feel like we have so many more refined metallic shades now that I never reach for these chunky ones. So yeah, let's get into some more Oden's Eye. Here is the Alva 2 eyeshadow palette, and this is what the inside of it looks like. This is a perfect spring and summer palette. I love it. Also from Oden's Eye, the Norns palette, and it's absolutely incredible color story. The Alva eyeshadow palette. Honestly, take a look at the inside of this one. How pretty is this palette? I know that this color story is pretty common, but it's also one of my favorites, so I love it. Here is the Saga of Freya Cat with Golden Carriage. This one has a really stunning combination of mints and warm orangey shades, and for some reason it works. I love combining the colors that come in this palette. From that same collection, this one is called the Tears of Freya, and I obsess over this color story for the spring and summertime. It's just perfection. The Danessa Myricks Light Work Volume 3 palette. I believe this was limited edition, so I don't think you can buy it anymore, but isn't it pretty? This was so much fun to play with. From Kaleidos, this is called the Escape Pod palette, and it is so beautiful. I love this one also for the spring and summer season. I love Kaleidos eyeshadow formulas, and this has a great combination between colorful and neutral, between shimmer and matte. What is not to love? Here is my original Jaclyn Hill palette, ordered exactly at 9 AM the day it launched for the first time. And here is what the inside of it looks like. Honestly, this is the best thing Morphe has ever released, and I stand by that. I also have the Volume 2, not as wearable, but also really stunning. I actually really like this color story, and the formula is pretty similar to the one in the first palette, so also pretty amazing for Morphe. Here is the biggest palette in my collection, which is the Be Perfect Cosmetics Carnival, the Antidote palette in collaboration with Stacey Marie. I bought and reviewed this palette and I actually really liked it. There are some formulas in here that I wish were a little bit more blendable, but overall it was a really nice palette to play with. However, after buying it and playing with it, I convinced myself that I am never gonna get a palette this big ever again. I'm honestly not interested. I feel like it's a bit too much, and so yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys love huge palettes? I feel like 18 shades is like my happy medium. We are now at the last shelf, which is my favorite shelf, where I have all of my most favorite palettes. So let's get started. Pat McGrath Venus in Fleur in Voyeuristic Vixen. Since all of these palettes have this exterior packaging, I'm going to be showing you the boxes. This is what the inside of Voyeuristic Vixen looks like. I die for this palette. It is burgundy and rose gold and beautiful. This one is called Bronze Borealis. And this is what the inside of it looks like. Having the one I just showed you, this is kind of like the uglier version of it. So I mean, it's really pretty, but not as impressive as the previous one. I still like it, but I like the other one better. And I'm disappointed that she made the pan smaller. Deep Space Divinity. And here's what the inside of this one looks like. This matte shade is a bit too intense for me. I definitely need a transition color when I use it. And then my favorite shade from this one is this stunning duochrome down here. It's like blue burgundy. It's crazy beautiful. This one here is called Eternal Eden. It's my least favorite Pat McGrath quad, and I feel like even the packaging they didn't put that much effort into. Still stunning, because let's face it, all Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes are stunning, but still this one is my least favorite. This next one is called Interstellar Icon, and here is the inside of it. Let me tell you, there's something about Pat McGrath blue eyeshadows that I simply cannot resist. I love this one. This one right here is called Ritualistic Rose. All 4 of these shades are Astro Blitz shades, which is Pat McGrath's special formula, and this is one of my favorite quads from her. This one here is called Risque Rose. This duochrome silver, purple, and this super beautiful deep rich brown make this palette totally worth it for me. I also love this rose gold champagne type of shade down here. So beautiful. Fleur Fantasia next. This one is the Pat McGrath Spring palette. These colors are so soft and so beautiful. I love this one for the spring and summer season. Blitz Astral in Nocturnal Nirvana. This is the most colorful of all of the quads. Also, all 4 of these are Blitz Astral shades, and I love this one. This one here is called Iconic Illumination. All 4 of these are Blitz Astral shades. My favorite one is this shiny one right here, and this is the last of the Pat McGrath quads. So let's move on to some Huda Beauty. This is the Huda Beauty New Nudes palette. Really lovely formulas in here. I love the romantic color story with the pops of depth over here. The chunky glitters, not my favorite anymore. Again, those kind of had a time, but the rest of this palette is really great. This one here is the Naughty Nudes palette, also from Huda Beauty. This palette is a burgundy lover's dream. I love the shimmers in this palette. They are so reflective, so metallic, and the mattes in the palette are pretty awesome as well. These are made in Italy, and the formula of these is around 100 times better than her formula in the Obsessions palettes. Huda Beauty Rose Quartz is the newest one. This one came out during fall last year. Same amazing formula. Love how reflective the shades in here are. It's a much softer color story, but just as lovely. I'm obsessed with the last few 18-pan palettes Huda Beauty has released. Mercury Retrograde is another Huda Beauty palette that I just die for. This one is perfection for the spring and summer season. It's got some pastel shades, and the metallic colorful shades in this palette are the most incredible. I love all of the color combinations I can come up with using the Mercury Retrograde palette, and I believe right now my 5 looks 1 palette using this one is my most watched video on my channel. Let's get into some Natasha Denona. This right here is the Glam palette, Face and Eyes, and I have to admit to you, this is one of my favorite palettes in my whole collection. These inner and outer corner shades have the most beautiful metallic reflective capabilities. They are amazing, and the transition, crease, and smoke shade are to die for. Natasha Denona has my favorite matte eyeshadows formula from all of the palettes in my collection, and when she pairs her beautiful, stunning matte formula with really metallic shimmers, I am weak, okay? I love it. Then we have the Natasha Denona Retro palette, which is a cool-toned rose palette, and it has a couple of burgundies. Emphasis on the cool tone, because while I really love rose-toned eyeshadow palettes, for some reason, the reason being that it's all cool tones, this one is not my favorite. Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. I really love this one of the more colorful ones, and with Natasha's amazing formula. The Zendo palette from Natasha is another one of my favorites. For some reason, this is not like a fan favorite from Natasha. A lot of people didn't love it as much as I do, but it is honestly one of my favorite color stories that Natasha has done. I just love combining the warm orangey peachy shades with the cool toned more green minty shades. This palette is just lovely. If you have it and you struggle creating looks with this one, check out my 5 looks 1 palettes. On the other hand, this one here is a fan favorite, including myself. I love the Natasha Denona Glam palette. If you like neutral, cool tone, nude shades, this is the palette for you. This is perfect for everyday, perfect for a work environment. It's lovely, honestly. Plus, the names of the shades tell you exactly what to do with them. My least favorite of her $65 palettes is the Love palette. It's a pretty color story, but I don't love the purples in here, and I'm also not a huge fan of like these specific tones of red. So while I do like it, I just don't like it as much as I like the rest of them. The Bronze palette is definitely a must-have palette from Natasha Denona. Natural looking shades, a little bit of warmth on the eye area. This palette is incredible. It has the most buttery shades ever and a really good combination of mattes and shimmers. My newest Natasha Denona palette, the Natasha Denona Pastel palette. I've told you I struggle with pastel shades, but she did pastels justice with this one. This palette is incredible. Every single look I created I loved, and I was able to combine all of these different colors in ways that looked so flattering. This palette was definitely a hit. And then I have the Metropolis palette right here. I kind of wish she would release more palettes with this format. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. A lot of different shades, more than 18, which I said was my happy medium, but still, it's Natasha Denona. She can do it. And they are all the smaller sized pans, so you get a lot for what you pay. I don't know. I really like the color story of this one, and it's perfect for the fall and the holiday season. I love it. This right here is the love of my life in a palette, my most favorite Natasha Denona palette ever, the gold palette. As I said before, Natasha has the best matte formulas in my opinion, and when she combines it with really metallic shiny shades, I'm weak, okay? And this one has the best glimmery metallic shades that Natasha has come out with, so every time I use this palette, I feel special. Here is the Circo Loco palette. For everybody who loves color and loves Natasha Denona formulas, this one is the one to get. I do wish that this one was in her $65 size rather than the $129 size, but still, it's a pretty palette. The last Natasha Denona palette I have to show you is the Trio Chrome palette, and I really love the color story of this one, but I feel like I like the shades individually rather than combined. I think this is a palette that I more so want to jump into for specific shades rather than use it all together. So I don't use it much for that reason, but it's pretty. I do like it. Pat McGrath Holiday. This is the Mothership Mega Celestial Divinity palette. This one came out a couple of holidays ago. 12 of these shades were repeated from previous collection. This palette has really stunning duochrome shades, and as with most Pat McGrath palettes, I wish it had a couple more mattes, but it is in the Pat McGrath DNA to have the most stunning shimmers and a really good variety of them. Totally worth it in my opinion. She makes these palettes a lot more affordable than the rest of her collection, and I always recommend them because I'm obsessed with Pat McGrath. And then last year she came out with Celestial Odyssey. I'm obsessed with the outside packaging of this one, and once you open it, look at the stunning shades inside. This one has one more matte than the previous one, which I really appreciate, and then just the most stunning shimmer shades to accompany it. Back with some more Odin's Eye. This is the Red Dragon palette, which is a collaboration with Judy, and I am obsessed with this one. This might be my most used, probably most favorite Odin's Eye palette in my collection. From that same collection, Annette's collaboration palette, Giant Wolves, was also a favorite. Just look at how grungy and colorful and beautiful this palette is. Plus it's got some multi-chrome shades, stunning mattes. I'm obsessed with like these dark mattes right here to like darken up looks. So pretty. And then the Hummingbird palette, which was a collaboration with the Fancy Phase. This one is a Tropical Dream. I'm putting it sideways because my camera wouldn't focus. Anyways, look at that shimmer purple shade and the color Fancy and just all of it. It's so pretty. This palette for the summer season, perfection. Last palette I have to mention from Odin's Eye is the Soulmane 2 palette, which very recently came out. I'm obsessed with this palette, you guys. It is so pretty. Also a perfect palette for the summer season. So colorful. I love the shimmers. I love the mattes, the pigmentation. I believe that they will be restocking this palette soon, and I can't wait. I will definitely notify you when it comes back because it sold out so quick, and I know a lot of you wanted it. From Alamar Cosmetics, this is La Reina del Caribe palettes. I'm truly obsessed with this one. Plus, it reminds me of home because it is a palette inspired by Cuba. Also from Alamar Cosmetics, the Spanglish palette is lovely. Perfect for the spring and summer season as well. I love colors like Pero Like, Eres un Show, Ay Que Cute. The last Kaleidos palette I'm going to show you is my favorite Kaleidos palette. This is called Club Nebula, and it's a collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist. This palette is colorful and it's grungy and it's got some of the most stunning shades. I love how many mattes she put in here. I love the quality of these dark mattes. Back in this corner, it is lovely. And then you have the contrast of the super beautiful shimmery metallic shades. Last Alamar Cosmetics palettes, Disney Encanto eyeshadow palette. I love this one. Great mattes and even better shimmers. A really nice and colorful color story, and the colors remind me a lot of the color palette from the movie. I love that movie Encanto, and the palette is lovely. Next I have the ABH Norvina palette volume 4. I don't own all of the Norvina palettes because I don't love all of the Norvina palettes, but the two I own I do really love, and this is one of them. A little bit too big maybe, but all of hers are. Now my favorite one from Norvina, hands down, volume 5. If you love purple eyeshadows and burgundy eyeshadows, look no further than this palette. I love the formulas in here as well. Like I said, my favorite Norvina palettes. Next, we are going to talk about Pat McGrath Mothership palettes. These retail for $128. I believe she raised the price from $125 to $128 recently, but honestly, do not buy any of these full price because she has sales every other month. Follow me on Instagram if you want to make sure you're up to date in all of the sales happening. This one right here is Mothership number 1. It is called the Subliminal palette. Most of this kind of palette from Pat McGrath come in this beautiful sleek black packaging, and here is the inside of Mothership number 1. This is the first one she launched, and to this day one of my favorites. As I said earlier, the blue shades that Pat McGrath makes are special, and so I absolutely love this palette. First of all, it's got really beautiful cool tone matte shades that will match anything. It has a black shade and the Blitz Astral shades that come in this one, which are these 4 shades on the right side of the palette, are absolutely stunning. I have made rankings videos with all of my Pat McGrath palettes that I'll have linked below in case you're interested. Next, take a look right here. This is Mothership number 2, Sublime. And here is what the inside of this one looks like. Beautiful, beautiful Blitz Astral shades in this one as well. I die for this pink and this reflective white, plus this deep brown shade is also so beautiful. Take a look at Mothership number 3, Subversive. This one is also a top favorite of mine because of how diverse it is. It has 2 matte shades that are so versatile, and then a bunch of pops of color that you can mix with those 2 around it that go so well. Plus every single one of the Astro Blitz shades in this palette are to die for. This deep midnight blue shade right here with the sparkles, oh, I die. So pretty. Mothership number 4 is called Decadence. Unfortunately, this one is my least favorite of the bunch because there's no difference in the formulation of the shades. No mattes in this one, no Astro Blitz shades. They're all just good old plain shimmers, and I just wished for more. They are beautiful shades to use individually anyways though. Here is Mothership number 5, Bronze Seduction. If you love warm toned shades, you will probably prefer this palette. This is a lot of people's favorites. The Astro Blitz shades in this one also really, really stunning. So sparkly, so beautiful. And then this one actually has 3 matte shades, which is kind of rare in these types of palette from Pat. She mostly usually has only 2 mattes, but I really appreciated when it comes with 3. I will say the formula of this beet shade down here is a little bit dry on mine. Mothership number 6, Midnight Sun, another favorite of mine, also has 3 matte shades and the Blitz Astral shades in this one. Really, really stunning. Mothership number 7, Divine Rose. My one of this one comes in this special packaging, and I'm pretty obsessed with how different it is. I really wish she did more limited edition packages like this one more often. Anyways, this is the inside of my Divine Rose palette, and in my rankings video, I do consider this one my number 1 favorite because it is so versatile. By the way, I have done 5 looks 1 palette videos with every single one of my Pat McGrath palettes, so definitely check those out. And the thumbnail picture of my 5 looks 1 palette with this one is what makes me choose it as my number 1 favorite every time, because I love the way this palette performs and how it shows up on the eyes. It's stunning. It's just simply stunning. Mothership number 8 is called Divine Rose 2, and it's like Divine Rose 1's naughty little sister. Excuse my fingerprints. This one has a limited edition rose gold packaging, and here is what the inside of this one looks like. This one has a multi-chrome shade right here. I also love this gold tone, and this peachy matte shade, also one of my favorites in this palette, plus I love the matte burgundy too. Last but not least, the Utopian Dream is Mothership number 9, and just take a look at how absolutely stunning this one is. These are the Blitz Astral shades in this palette. It also has a multi-chrome shade, and as you can see, because it's pretty visible on camera, these two Astral Blitz shades are the shiniest of all of them. She had never released a palette with as shiny of shades as these two, and for that reason I really love this palette. Plus she did put 3 mattes in here, which are also really lovely. With my Mothership palettes, I am concluding this video. These are all of the palettes in my collection. I really hope that you guys like that I show you them all and that I said what I like or dislike about every single one of them. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up before you leave. Also, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. As I said before, I pretty much have multiple looks, one palette with majority of the palettes in my collection, and with the exception of maybe a handful of them, every single one of the palettes I talked about today has been talked about on my channel previously, and I have done a demo on them. So don't leave without subscribing. Thank you for watching today's video. Let me know if you liked it, and that is all I have for you guys today. I love you so much. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye.